Welcome everyone to episode 10 of Knightsarena Spike Down. My name's Keith LaFortune, and joining me once again is Sean Gares. We'll cover last week's matches, look at teams and players that really need to kick it into high gear, and of course our predictions that last week were kind of scuffed. Some of them worked out. I'd say most of our predictions were pretty good, but last week's games were kind of crazy. Sean, you were telling me a little bit before we started. Last week's games didn't really do it for you. Is there a reason for that overall?
I don't know. I just thought there was a lot of like lopsided games when I looked at the schedule. Like, I wasn't really into the Guard and OR series. I wasn't really into the FaZe Mad series. On the other side of the bracket was pretty nice. I think like M80 versus TSM, I wanted to see how TSM fared. And then obviously I'm like super biased towards Shopify. So like that was a dope
Yeah.
series. So
Yeah.
I guess like one side gave us good games and the other side didn't. It was like hit or miss with the games.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's start with Wednesday. Turtle Troop taking down Oxygen, Moist beating G2. That Wednesday was straight underdogs running amok. I don't even know if we can call Moist underdogs at this point, but Turtle Troop getting a much-needed win over Oxygen, and Moist taking down G2. That Wednesday was full of surprises, I think.
Yeah, I think that's why I thought the week sucked is because it started so insane. Like that
Yeah.
first day was sick. It was like back-to-back upsets with Turtle Troop taking on Oxygen, and this was like Reduxx's debut, and you've hyped
Yep.
the out of this kid.
A little,
Like,
maybe too much. Maybe a little too much. But yeah, I did.
I was expecting like Jesus Christ to literally enter the server and just slaughter everyone. Like I didn't know what to expect when I was watching him. But he was actually very good. This
Yeah.
was a series where I felt like with a little bit more experience, probably Oxygen ends up taking it. But because of the fact that they looked a little bit, I guess, like under prepped with this lineup,
Mhm.
and also you have to keep in mind, dude, their average like so low. Like,
Two 16-year-olds, Pooney's just 20, Scuba's 19, 20. So what? Mitch brings the average up, but it's probably only like 21 if we did the math around there. So
bro, Bonkar's literally running playground. Like he's
one car's
literally running
daycare,
daycare. Yeah,
yeah.
like I was talking to my friend about this. I'm like, I couldn't even imagine IGLing that team. Like, it would be very difficult because there would
Yep.
be a lot of usually when I think of like building a team, kind of like what we did with 100 Thieves, I want a lot of like experienced players on there. And they have some experience with like Mitch and Scuba, and to an extent like Pony, I guess he played with Steel for a bit.
Mhm.
But man, it's very hard when you're teaching a couple players a lot of the
Yeah.
fundamentals simultaneously. Like they're gonna have a lot of very high highs and maybe some low lows, and then eventually they're gonna figure it out and start owning everyone. Either that or they're gonna implode and die. That's my prediction for Oxygen.
Yeah, and I mean, I was talking to them too, and they're like, "Yeah, we're finally starting to figure out what our strengths are, how to mid round properly." And Mitch is doing a lot, and he's microing sometimes, and we still follow really good game plans. But I think what Boncar is really instilling in them is these strong fundamentals and trusting each other and really building that team up because. The young players aren't afraid to make plays, but it's like, are they always the right plays? Are they crazy plays? So there's a lot of work for Boncar to do. I think he's done great. And this split's important for them. And I think they need to kind of start to figure it out. They should have some time now. But with that Verno Reduxx core leading the way that match, it was cool to watch. I think maybe the biggest upset of the week, realistically, or close to nearly biggest upset of the week, would have been that what happened Thursday with OR guard. OR pushing the guard. When I interviewed the players, they're like, man, we really should have won that series. We really messed up. And it was what, 13-11, 13-11 back-to-back maps. Surprising, I think, to see OR push the guard that hard.
I mean, you can clearly see that, Vapin and the crew at OR worked super hard in the offseason. That's like back-to-back games against the top teams in their group, right? They
Yeah.
beat G2 in week 1. And I think I was a little bit skeptical because I was like, well, how much did G2 prac in the offseason? Let's see how they play against the guard.
Yeah.
And honestly, like after that series, I'm left having the same amount of questions, right? Because they played the guard super well, but they
Yeah.
just couldn't get it over the finish line. And both of the games were like comebacks. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Did the guard let their foot off the gas at all? Like, did they respect their opponents in the second half? I don't know. Like, I still don't know what to really make out of OR esports right now, this split.
Yeah. I mean, at least you can take at least some comfort in their pickups. Getting Physic, who's
True.
their new IGL, and from talking to the team, I talked to Pancakes. I was able to talk to Jonah, and Physic brings a lot to this team. And even though he hasn't been active for a while, and this is his first team back in like 3 or 4 or 5 months, they really appreciate what he's doing for the team. They're practicing more intently. Vapin's on them more, and Pancakes, I think, is an underrated pickup. I think he's played well, and I think hopefully they can keep this rolling. They look good, but unfortunately, at this point, they can't afford to look good. They have to look great. Is kind of the unfortunate
Yeah.
circumstance they find themselves in. And Shopify taking down DSG, they ran it back. Ye was doing his thing. Exalt came in. Shopify needed this win, and they got it in the end. And I think we talked about that. Kind of Shopify need to win every game, pretty much.
Yeah, Shopify really need to like get the ball rolling because I mean, we were talking off air. It's about points, not where you place in this
Yep.
specific split. So what happened in the first split actually matters a lot for Shopify. They didn't get a lot of points, obviously, from that split by not making playoffs. So it was big to get the win over this like hobbled DSG, right? Where
Hmm.
Steel was replaced by Exalt for this game, and Exalt was apparently remember looking at the like the match thread after it, and it was a lot of pessimistic fans about DSG. It was like
Yeah.
no optimism about Shopify. It was all like, "What the f are DSG doing? Like this team is so bad." Like it's, but I don't know why because I agree that the fans are a little bit upset about the roster changes to an extent,
Sure.
but I don't know what they expect. Like
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
DSG performed really well in split one. Even getting into challengers was a huge accomplishment for
100%.
Steel and the roster they built, and it just takes time in Valorant. Like, I don't know
Yep.
what what, like, the DSG fans expect. I am still thinking, like, well, given everything that's happened and their competition, I think they're doing great, and on the
100%.
other side, I kind of already talked about Shopify, they just need to win.
Yeah, they need the wins, and they ended up getting it Friday. Uh, Pretty much the day of relaxation, almost. M80 dropping a map to TSM, but they end up cleaning it up in the end. And FaZe Clan a I don't even know. I want to say bloodbath against Mad Lions. The two teams that have very similar styles, the narrate and the Smeeg Baby Bay. Both teams starting to try to shy away from that. When I talk to them, like, no, we're trying to get more structured. We're trying to get more disciplined. But when they played each other, it felt like a clash of the same styles, really.
Wait, you're talking about FaZe Mad?
Yeah, it felt
Yeah.
like two exact teams that are trying to get out of bad habits, and the way they play each other, like, we could have them together. Like we could do this together.
Yeah, it was like if you just removed the names, like doing like those like blur out things where you guess
Yeah.
the player, I wouldn't even be able to guess the team. Maybe sometimes it could be it could be either of them. No, I'm just kidding.
it,
I would be
it
able
felt
to tell
like
a lot
that.
of times based on comp, but uh, I think, dude, FaZe is one of those teams where man, I have been off the mark on this team the
Hmm.
whole time in challengers. I've been off the mark on them, and I think this result is about where realistically they are, right? Like probably just a little bit better than
Yeah,
Mad Lions, which is that's actually
which is
insane for me
crazy.
to say that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
based on what my perception of phase was before split 1 started. Like I cannot believe that today at the start of May 2023, like I'm saying phase is barely above Mad Lions. Like that is a drastic change in my mental on this
yeah.
team.
And they've gone through changes. They have Poise playing three different agents over three maps. They have Mame playing Raze, Breach, and Viper on Split, Fracture, and Pearl. So they have that diversity, they have that depth, but still just, I mean, a win's a win. You can't say anything about that. I
Yeah.
think Supermen played up to the Supermen we know of old this series, which was great. 6 first kills, no first deaths. He's been the clutch master this entire time. We'll talk about him a little bit more later, but really good performance. As you said, barely better than Mad Lions, which isn't the best feeling or the best thing to say. hopefully they could turn that ship around. They really need to. Another team
Yeah.
like Shopify that need wins bad. And now we're gonna
Before
look
this game, they
ahead.
lost 10 straight, dude. They lost 10 straight maps before
That's
this
so
game,
true. I
so
actually forgot
maybe
about
they
that.
can
You
turn
talked
it
about the
around.
Sea of Red. Yeah, they definitely. This should be the start, and it's kind of like Shopify. As soon as you get that win, you get that green. You're like, okay, it validates some progress. It gives us some confidence, and hopefully they can roll with that forward. And let's look ahead. Obviously, teams that need to improve. Kind of general thoughts on a few teams, and it seems like from the outside, G2. I put down G2 having issues, but I don't know if that's fair to say or it's G2 taking a foot off the gas to kind of experiment and practice a bit more. I'm not too sure. How do you kind of feel about them?
Yeah, the G2 series. So they played Moist, and I mean, they went up in the first map. And
Hmm.
honestly, if dude, if I'm being real, I felt like that first map was fluky
Mm.
because in that map, G2 went up like 4-1, and then Moist
Yeah,
just on them for the rest of the half. Like they didn't lose a single round. And then
six
the
straight.
second half
Yeah,
started, and Moist just looked so not ready to play the second half of that game. It was so weird to watch that game play out because it was actually Moist pick to play Lotus. And when I was watching their attack half, it was like nothing was explosive enough to get
yep.
into a site against G2. But then when we went to like Ascent and Haven, like just, the vanilla maps where they could
Hmm.
just take normal fights that they and not just going to stack sites, Moist ran them over like 13-5, 13-4, and these games were not close at
Yeah,
all. So I don't
it
know
was
what to think
weird.
about G2 right now.
Yeah, I'm on the fence about G2 overall at the moment. I think Penny is at lowest of lows at the moment. Playing, they're forcing Harbor on him. He has to flex quite a bit depending on the map, and he just hasn't been there. And I think when Penny has good games, this team plays unreal. Aside from Oxy, it's nice when Oxy has a good series, but I really think Penny and Dapper, when they have good series, they win, and everybody else kind of plays well around them. Uh, just kind of struggling lately. And to talk about Moist in this series, Lotus for them, as you mentioned, a little rocky against Matt. It looked great. It's another one of those things where maybe a new map, still trying to figure out what's not working. They might have tried something new, and I don't know how to feel about G2. Let's keep in mind they also lost to OR before that, both 2-1 series. So it's coming down to the little things. You're able to get to the third map, you're losing either opening rounds, your mid rounds are poor, you can't win clutches, and maybe it's just a combination of that right now for G2. I don't know. Again, they don't have to win, but for seeding purposes, and you still want some points to split, you really don't want to get 5, 6 seeded heading into playoffs and playing Moist again, like realistically, or Oxygen.
Yeah.
That would be an awful first round game.
Oh man, you don't want to be at the bottom of the seeding pool because you're almost yeah, you're ensuring you're going to be playing like an M80 guard Moist type of beat
Yeah.
in round 1 of playoffs, and I don't care how confident you are. Like I don't care what form you're in. At best, you're getting a coin flip if you're
Yeah.
playing one of those 3 teams. It's
Yeah. That,
yeah, that's a scary proposition.
and hopefully they can turn it around. Granted, I talked to a few of them. They're like, yeah, we have to be cleaner. We have to fix our fundamentals. But overall, we're kind of experiment a little bit. This split and M80 kind of had the same vibes, but I feel like M80 are so comfortable right now, and their agent pool has been kind of the same. They kind of need to diversify, and I think G2 just need to you take this time and fix their issues and practice some comps and hopefully we can see them turn around. Another team bringing in a new player, Oxygen, bringing in Reduxx. Felt they looked okay. You mentioned it quickly. You felt like Reduxx looked decent. I probably overhyped them. I was, I pumped his tires a little bit. I'm a Leafs fan. We know how to do is hype up players. We don't know what defeat feels like. Crying. But I felt like they looked okay. As you said, just need more time maybe with Reduxx.
Yeah, I think they'll just need a little bit more time. I was kind of just I wasn't expecting the world out of Oxygen in this game. Like I wasn't expecting to blow me over tactically or like just dump on Turtle Troop. I really wasn't. What I was looking for was like how did Redux move around the map? Was
Hmm.
he comfortable in Killjoy? Did he have presence in like the late round? Was he like afraid to take fights? And I think he played a really good game. And I'm pretty optimistic about him moving forward, even if it has to be on a Killjoy role. But
Hmm.
there's definitely some role problems on this team.
Totally.
unless of course, someone makes like a career defining change, like Redux playing Sentinel. That's what would be necessary to make this all work.
Yeah, the only unfortunate caveat to that is time. The one thing they don't have. So
True.
it's we'll see what leaf they can turn over. And DSG exalts in. Seems like Steel is out in the shadows for a little bit. It feels like he's benched. They're at least tweeting that they're not making any changes for this next week's games. So Exalt staying. How do you feel about their performance overall with Exalt coming in, new IGL? It felt okay. I think the split was really the only map that I felt they looked the most sloppy on.
Yeah, I think they looked a little bit readable in like the later stages of that series, and I would even be inclined to say the way that they won on Ascent felt a little bit fluky. And I'm,
Mm,
I'm saying that very delicately because obviously I'm on Shopify, so I do have bias. But when I remember while watching that game, like a couple of the rounds they won, I don't know if there was like a thrifty in there or
yeah.
there was like a couple clutches or like timing peaks that went really well. And on the attack side of Ascent, you only need like a few times for that to happen, right? It's not like you need 7 or 8 attack rounds. You don't need that. You just need a few to get through on Ascent. And it just felt like DSG got several of those on attack.
Mhm.
And that's kind of on Shopify. Like Shopify looked pretty bad there. And I don't know if DSG would get that again in another series.
Yeah.
So while they won a map, I don't think DSG looked that great here.
Yeah. I think it's a long road for them. Being one of the teams I think have made the most changes up there with Mad Lions. It's hard to find consistency as a team and a unit with changes, and especially if you've had role issues. They said they brought Exalt back because they felt like they didn't have a pure initiator player. Right? You bring Ye in, even though you already have a duelist player. Now your duelist player has to flex. It's felt like a lot of forcible changes that players take time to adapt, and the season's not long enough, unfortunately, for that. We'll see what they can do. Their next up matches are really pivotal for them. They almost have to win out to have a chance to get points this split, or at least points that matter, a significant amount of points. And let's talk overall teams that need to kick it in high gear. We kind of made a quick little list. Teams that are kind of cuff teams that, to make 5-6 and really get comfortable and need to really start winning uh, faster than the DSGs and faster than the Mad Lions and faster than the OR is FaZe, Shopify Rebellion, Turtle Troop, and TSM. These teams, I think this is the week they need to kick it in high gear. They need to all win out, essentially.
Yeah, I mean Shopify play M80 this week too, so that'll be a rough game for them. After that, I think it gets a little bit easier for them, but pretty much the rest of Shopify's games are super important, like you said, right? They play M80, I
Yep.
believe. They play Oxygen and Turtle Troop still. So none of
Yeah.
those games are gimmies. They're all difficult, and you would argue they're probably underdogs against M80 and Oxygen, and
Yep.
maybe about close to even against Turtle Troop. I mean, that's kind of crazy for them. And then G2 sitting at 0-2. Like, even though they play second in split one, like they are really screwing themselves here.
Yeah, and seeding we talked about, it really matters, especially I mean, yes, playoffs is a double elimination bracket, but you do not want to go out in the first round because it's 3BO1, there are 3BO3s on the top. You lose right away. You have to play an extra like 2 to 3 best of 3s. That's brutal. That is
Yeah.
just not fun. And nobody wants to do that. So,
Ooh.
we'll see
And,
if these
and
teams
then,
can kick it into high gear.
dude, you mentioned FaZe. I'm just realizing. So they're chilling at 1-1, right? They lost against the
Yeah.
Guard. They beat Mad Lions. They still have G2 and Moist on the horizon. That they have OR this
Yeah.
week. So imagine if they were to lose against OR. Like
That
they
might be
would
wraps.
be
That
yeah,
might
that
be
that actually might be wraps. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
like while this game might not seem sick on paper, FaZe versus OR actually has a lot of implications for FaZe's probably playoff hopes.
Yep. Yep, 100%. And a lot of these teams are going to start feeling it. If you're not Auction, you're not G2, you're not the Guardian on M80, and maybe Moist, you're kind of feeling the heat right now because there's only 8 spots to make playoffs. There's going to be some people left out. And Man, I'm excited. This week is extremely important. The next 3 weeks are super important, but this one particular, it's kind of do or die time. Let's quickly go through a list of players that have impressed us. Players that have kind of stood out. We put the tandem of Fly and Aprodo. Fly is in game leading, just to clarify with everyone. Aprodo is kind of the backup man, but they're looking like front runners together. This team is looking so good, and to Fly a play like he's playing while IGLing, that's
Dude,
he's peaking at the right time.
Wyatt is so goddamn good. He actually, I'm gonna give him a shout out. I think he just released like a frag movie or something, right?
Well, there you go.
It was crazy. I'm gonna actually put it in Discord right now. I don't know. Maybe you guys can plug it or
Maybe we'll
something.
play
But
it. Maybe we'll show some
yeah,
clips while we talk. There we go.
actually wild. But I have so much respect for him because he's playing this initiator role. He's in game leading from the
Yeah,
initiator role, which is, in my opinion, the OP thing to do. It's what
100%.
all of the VCT, NA, IGLs are trying to do, but then they ended up realizing, like we're not as comfy on the initiator role as we are in the sentinel role or the controller
Yeah,
role. So now all these VCT NA teams are like going back to their old forms. But truly, IGLing from the initiator role would be optimal because you control
totally.
how your team gets info, you control when your duelist entries or how to set up a teammate with a flash or, stall stuff out with a molly. I think the initiator has the most control over a round in Valorant. So in my opinion, Moist's success probably reflects directly on Flya's success,
Mhm.
and it makes total sense why this team is succeeding.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's great to see. I know Fly has been given the short end of the stick in multiple situations throughout his career. To see him come into this team and push this team of underdogs that we kind of at the beginning of challengers kind of went, nah, they could be good. Um, and we've been humbled, and they have improved. I think the most out of anybody else. Let's speed run these next few. Seven's next up. Another young gun starting to find his own. I think he's really starting to grow into this player that people should be kind of looking out for.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people after the chamber meta were super critical of that kid. Like, man, people were harsh on Seven at that time. And I just knew it from playing with him. He had like a really good attitude. He was super snappy mechanically. And he just needed some time to find whatever role TSM was going to put him in. And hella respect for TSM to not caving to the community
Yeah,
and giving him some time to like settle in. Because I think if they listened to the community, they wouldn't be, you know, enjoying the benefits of the labor of like growing this kid and
100%.
allowing him to be able to play all these roles in this meta because he looks really good right now.
Yeah, and I think he's only gonna get better. He's young. Every time I interview him, he's like, "I'm so new to this." It's like it's okay, dude. Like like do
Yeah.
your thing. Like you frag out, do your thing. Next up, somebody who's used to all of this, multiple game champion, and coming into this phase roster and continuing his push is Superman, the clutch king. 5 out of 12 clutches, 42% clutch rate, a 31% headshot. It's good to see Superman finally get back to the Superman of old and flexing a little bit of KJ in there, which I like.
Yeah, I love seeing Superman like high on this list. He's like a really smart player, right? He's not going to be the player that overextends or does something stupid. And I wasn't really sure when I started this point, and I was like, please let the stats support it. So I was like sorting by first death, and I was like, I know this is going to be like way down there. And sure enough, he is. He's
Yeah.
fourth from the bottom. Okay. It's like only Nilly, Ainge, and EU have a lower, and actually two of them are tied. EU and Ainge
Wow.
have the same 0.04. So he's dying like less than like or about like 4% of the rounds first, which is
Interesting.
very, very low, right? In the controller role. Like he plays
Mhm.
insanely smart in his role, doesn't overextend, and allows players like Baby Bay to have
Yep.
the freedom to create opportunities for the team. So I've always been a huge Superman supporter.
Yeah, great to see him playing well. And then the last and final one that kind of stood out to us, Exalt. I'd say he played honestly pretty well considering he's missed out for a little bit. He's just kind of been playing those ranks, those 10 mans coming into IGL. Overall, I'd say he did Exalt of old. The one thing about Exalt that is never going to surprise me is his consistency. No matter what, you throw him in different situations, you throw him in different teams, he's always going to be that minimum that you expect from him. And I think that's impressive in its own right.
I agree. I've always been pretty high on Exalt as a player. I think he has struggled with finding like his place on a team as far as, what role he wants to play. whether that's IGL or not IGL, initiator or duelist or, you know, a chamber or whatever he wants to play, right? I think he's super skilled. I think he's a good leader figure in the team. He's very active on the comms and he has ideas. So he's a valuable player to have on the team as long as he knows his identity. That's
Yep.
what seems like my thoughts on Exalt right now after watching him for like what, probably like about a year now. Just when he's comfy and knows what he wants to do as a player, then I feel like the team around him will probably be a lot better.
Yeah, totally agree. And now let's look at this week's matches. I'm going to preference this by saying this week is super important. This is the kick it into high gear week, almost do or die. That would be the last 2 weeks. But you don't want to have it so your last two games have more importance. You really want to just alleviate that pressure and lay it on the line this next 2 weeks. And because if you're leaving it to your last game to make do or die in playoffs, that's not a great feeling. So let's speed run these ones. We'll start with Wednesday. We kick off with Disguised, Turtle Troop, Phase OR. I'll let you kick it off, Sean. What are you feeling?
Does the skies take this? Turtle Troop beat Oxygen, but Oxygen was like kind of a new team. You
Mm.
know what? I think I'm gonna go with the upset here. I'm gonna go with Disguise over Turtle Troop. I
Ooh.
actually think Turtle Troop has looked better so far this split. So this is like actually kind of me going out there. I
Yeah.
don't feel like Disguise has looked like the better team. I just think they have some really good pieces, and it's about the time where it should click, if
Okay.
it were to click.
Okay. I like that. I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna go Disguised as well. I think it's time they get a win. And I think they look decent against Shopify, and they're just a week away from this match. I think they definitely have time to clean that up. As far as Phase OR, I'm gonna make the second hot take of Wednesday. I think OR beat Phase.
Dude, I was thinking about doing the same thing, but
Yeah.
I don't want to have the world burned down. I'm going phase. I
Yeah,
don't
FaZe
want.
need the win. FaZe really need the win.
Yeah,
If OR have to pretty much win out to have a chance to even get points, and who knows if that's gonna matter. So yeah, FaZe need the win. I'm just I like watching the world burn sometimes. So we'll take it. Thursday, M80 Shopify, the Guard Moist Moguls. What a spicy Thursday. Perfectly placed in the middle of the week. Shopify need a win, and Moist Moguls, they don't need a win, but man, they're going up against the Goliath. I'll kick it off. I'm gonna, unfortunately, you're biased. I'm not, so I'm gonna go M80. Unfortunately, Sean, I'm sorry. And then as far as guard Moist Moguls, man, that's tough. If Moist can clean up like their Lotus, I think they can let that slip through the guard. I'm gonna go Moist beat the guard. That might be a super hot take.
dude, what did you have for breakfast? You're just taking all the dogs
I haven't
here.
eaten anything.
Okay,
I am just
okay,
hungry for
maybe that's
upsets.
why
So
then. Maybe you're just like
yeah,
pissed.
yeah. I need to take some risks this week.
Okay, I'm gonna go full copium. No,
Okay.
I see. I actually have to favor M80. Like, there's no way. I
Yeah.
feel like I can pick Shopify there. I'm gonna root for them, but I think logically I have to pick M80 in that matchup.
Hmm.
And I wanted to take Moist, but I feel like just to be on the other side as you, I'm taking the guard because there's no way we
Okay.
can both take the same team in that
That's fair.
matchup.
That's understandable. That's understandable. In Friday, G2, Mad Lions, Oxygen, TSM. I'll let you do your hot take first. I think the only one you'll have a hot take on is Oxygen, TSM.
Yeah, no way am I picking against G2 here. It's like kind of must win territory for them.
Yeah.
They're the better team, picking G2. And then Oxygen versus TSM. I'm still pretty high on TSM, I'm not gonna lie. I think even though they lost to M80, the way they played, they looked really good there. I thought they looked good against Shopify. Even though I think Oxygen has impressed me probably a dozen times since our challengers, gonna pick against them, going TSM.
I'm going to agree with you. Agree with your picks. I think TSM are continuing to look better. I think Capecchi's starting to finally find his own footing and voice in that team. And I think the roles swaps they made when they picked up Kempeki puts GMD in a really nice comfort spot. And he's been owning. And that's it. That's the show. Thank you everyone for watching. Make sure to follow Sean Gares and myself on our socials. Let us know what you think about our predictions. A lot of hot takes this week. So be prepared for that. Don't forget to follow Knightsarena. Stay up to date on everything Challengers. And the matchups are coming soon. So make sure you stay tuned.